Bonjour et bienvenue à notre Préface-à-Face. Cette semaine, j'ai comme invité notre ancienne première chef invitée, Simone Young, qui est avec nous cette semaine pour un programme tout viennois. Simone, Vienna is a city that's been very important for you, its music as well. You were the first woman to conduct the Vienna Philharmonic at the Staatsoper, I believe.
That's correct.
And you've been a regular ever since.
That's right, yes, since 1993, so nearly 30 years.
Right. Okay. Oh, it is, isn't it? Yes. So what is it that what's the connection for you with the music of Vienna? What sort of?
Well, it's a repertoire that I have felt at home in for a long time. And of course, during my time in Hamburg, this was a city where Mahler was one of the music directors 100 years before I arrived. And so there is a long tradition of this repertoire in the city. Mahler, also the whole German romantic repertoire. So the concept of a program that is Viennese turn of the century, connected to Mahler, and I love the reference of the Berio to Schubert. So it's really centered in Vienna.
There's a little twist with this piece, which is on the program as being Berio, but in fact it's equal parts Berio and Schubert. How do you find this piece?
It's very curious because Berio took the sketches that existed for a 10th symphony from Schubert, and he's reconstructed, but not really attempted to completely reconstruct. He's basically orchestrated the sketches that we have, and then in between there are shadows which are much more his own musical language. One of the musicians put it beautifully yesterday. She said it's as though you keep opening and shutting the window. When you open the window, you hear Schubert, and you shut it, and you just hear these shadows and fragments. And then you open the window again and hear some more Schubert.
That's a very nice way of putting it. Actually, I also saw that Berio referred to it as being like a restoration, like a painter restoring a painting. And where there's the original pigment is gone, he doesn't try to fill it in. He just tries to give you the relationship of all of the bits that are left.
And he uses a very traditional Schubert size orchestra, traditional string size, double winds, pair of trumpets, 3 trombones, a timpani. So it's a very traditional orchestra, but in the passages that are Berio rather than Schubert, it's very fragmented. There's a lot of ponticello for the strings, so it's just very shadowy. And
a little celeste that tinkles every time you move into Berio as well.
A lot of celeste, yes. The celeste player is very busy in this program.
Indeed. And the Mahler songs that we're doing as well is a special arrangement by Schoenberg. There's a lot of interaction between these composers, isn't there?
I love this idea of putting together a program which is Berio reflecting Schubert, and then Schoenberg reflecting Mahler. When Schoenberg was a very young music director in Aachen, a very small, beautiful, historic, but very small city on the edge of Germany, he was very frustrated that he couldn't perform the works that he loved. So he did all these arrangements for small orchestra so he could perform them. So we've actually performed one of them here before. We did the Lied von der Erde a few years ago. And I fell in love with this arrangement a long time ago because my first connection with these songs was as a pianist. Which is, of course, the composer crystallized down to the smallest components, just a duet between voice and piano. And this arrangement with 5 solo strings, 2 woodwinds, a piano, a harmonium, very quirky instrument that Schoenberg loves. Mahler used occasionally, Strauss used quite a lot in his operas. The harmonium replaces the horns, trumpets and trombones completely in a kind of a fade-in, fade-out sort of way. And the whole thing gives a completely new twist to these songs. We know the Mahler orchestration, which is huge and luscious, and here it's taken right down to its bare bones. And it becomes actually a different work of music.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. And then with the last piece, Verklärte Nacht, La Nuit Transfigurée, Schoenberg, I always find it interesting that most people, I think, when they think of Schoenberg, think of things that are very big and atonal, and this is anything but, isn't it?
Most people, sadly, hear the name Schoenberg and think, I'm not going to understand it, and I'm not going to like it. And this is Schoenberg at his most beautiful, really taking the late romantic tradition of Richard Strauss and Mahler almost to its logical conclusion. It is exquisite. It's written for beautiful espressivo strings. Of course, the original of the work was just a sextet. So this is Schoenberg revisiting Schoenberg and making it larger instead of smaller.
Right, exactly.
And we doing it with a chamber orchestra, with chamber-sized strings. It's a very interesting exercise because I've done it in the past with a huge symphony orchestra, and bringing it down to this size is very intimate, but it's very passionate and it's extremely beautiful. So, si vous avez peur de Schoenberg, pas de souci.
Absolutely. That's something also that I have to say that every time I've talked to people outside of the OCL about, and we've had Simone Young as our principal guest conductor, they say, but Simone Young always does big stuff. She does Bruckner and Strauss and Mahler and Wagner. And so what's the attraction for you of working with a chamber orchestra, or specifically with this chamber orchestra, I suppose?
I said to one of the musicians yesterday that I love coming here because it's like I find my musical soul again. By bringing it down to a working environment that is so intimate and repertoire that is designed to be intimate, I find it centers me as a musician, and it makes me very creative because you have a completely different palette of colors to play with. Yes, I'm often doing the big works, the larger scale of the romantic works, but I love this crystallizing of the musical idea into a small jewel, and I find it refreshing, invigorating, and they're great. I mean, this is a fantastic orchestra. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.